it's time again, me caving friends for some music and some fun. With Dangerous Dick and his crew handpicked duckbusters everyone. And we're here to sing till the rafters ring and our throats are feeling raw. Then we'll head back down to the underground, cause we're cavers to the core. Cavers to the core, good boys, we're cavers to the core.
And it was quite shocking how hard that was. But anyway, it was wonderful. Thank you, Aria. I had a blast in one form or another. It was memorable. And I will not forget any of it.
Type 2 fun.
Type 2, bordering on type 3 fun, yeah. Anyway, so I wasn't quite sure what to present, so I decided I just got back from a trip to Greenland, which was kind of a science exploration trip, so I figured I'd talk about the work that we were doing up there. It's part of this larger group called the Northeast Greenland Caves Project, who's been working in Greenland since 2015. I should say that is the furthest most explored cave in the world, right there. So to show you guys where we were, this is Iceland. So Reykjavik is right here, which is the main city in Iceland. And then we flew, we took a chartered plane up to here, which was called, what was that? I think Pinion Point or Prince Point. And then here to Damakshavn, which is one of the northernmost manned weather stations in the world. And from there, we chartered a plane up to this area here. So I got some information about that. But first, let's talk about why we were up there. So Greenland, as you probably know, has one of the biggest ice sheets in the world, second only to Antarctica. And if we lose the Greenland ice sheet, then the water levels are going to go up 17 feet, which means that Manhattan is underwater. So it's really important to understand how areas such as Greenland respond to climate change. And so far that's been done by looking at cores of the ice. And what you can do is you can take a core through the ice and you can actually take the bubbles of gas that get trapped. So snow will land and get compressed and it traps air that gets caught in the ice in these tiny little air bubbles and they get trapped. And you can go in with a needle, you can pull them out, and you can look at the stable isotopes of that gas and figure out if it was a warmer climate or a cooler climate. And they can do that in Greenland. This is a core for Greenland, here and here. They've got 2 time periods. But they can only go back reliably about 140,000 years because that's how old the ice is. So 140,000 years of seasons lying up on top of each other gives you the depth of the Greenland ice cap, which is about 3,000 feet. So you can only go back 140,000 years, and we don't know what the climate was like before that. It's important to study areas such as where we're going up here. The red here shows how quickly the ice is melting. So what's happening as the ice melts, ice kind of is almost like limestone and karst, and it will actually run through the glacier and kind of make rivers underground and conduits, much like you see with caves. And those conduits can actually kind of lubricate the glacier on top of the rock, and the glacier will start accelerating towards the ocean, and then that ice is lost. So understanding where you have this greater acceleration with the deep red helps you understand how the glacier is going to respond to climate change. So we were going to be in this area up here, which is pretty sensitive. And this is just the closest ice core. So they can do is they put these cores together. They've got a big drill piece. You guys have seen them. They're very much like what you have here. And they go down and they pull out these ice cores and look at the ice. So that takes you back 140,000 years, but we don't know anything about when Greenland was warm and wet. And we know it was warm and wet because there are some caves there that have speleothems in them. And for speleothems to form, you have to have rainwater percolating through the ground, and you get drips, and you get formations. So this is a geologic map of Greenland, and these brown areas here are where there's limestone. So we know that there's some limestone, and this is 80 degrees north. And this is the area we're working here. the history is that there was an article in the NSS Bulletin in 1960. And the reason that there is an article is that during the Cold War, America wanted to have bases in the Arctic, so if there was a fight between Russia and North America, we could kind of like just hop over the pole and bomb Russia. And so they did a lot of prospecting for runways and army bases, and there's a big flat plain out there, and they were out there with geologists, and the geologists were cavers and NSS members, and they noticed caves, and they went up to the caves, and they saw that there was flowstone in them. So Gina Mosley is interested in climate change, and she thought, well, if there's caves up there, I wonder if there's speleothems, and if there's speleothems, can we cut the speleothems out and do carbon dating on the speleothems, or sorry, isotope dating on the speleothems, and figure out what the climate was more than 140,000 years ago. This is just another map of acceleration, just to show where we were going. Okay, this is the area we are going. This is Sondrestrom So, and the reason we went there is there's actually an airfield right in here, and all the caves that were marked are right about here in this big valley, and they were up in this big valley because it's also big enough that you can land a large plane and possibly build a army base. This is what it looked like 2 days before we left. Oh, that's right, sorry. I should have looked at my slides before. Gina went up in 2005, 2015. She got money from National Geographic and about 59 other sponsors to put an expedition together to go up and look at these caves that were described by geologists and see if they had flowstone in it and collect some flowstone. So she had about $200,000, which seems like an awful lot of money for a caving expedition, but you have to charter planes to get you all the way up there and all the way back. So most of the expense is in planes simply to land you here on this landing strip. So what they did is they landed here and then they did the entire thing by foot. They took a boat across this lake and then they hiked all the way up here looking for caves. This is the area that was noted for caves by the NSS Bulletin. So this is them. There was a 4-person team. So this is 2015. This is the lake. This is high summer in Greenland. So you can expect a high of about 40 degrees. A low could be around like 10. Pulling the boat into the lake, and then we got to the other side of the lake, and then they had to start hiking. I think they ended up, the round trip journey was about just over 50 miles. So it was all done on foot. And anyway, they got to the area where the geologists have noted caves, and you can see there's holes all in the cliffs there. This is Crystal Palace. This is looking out Crystal Palace, and you can see the valley that the geologists were scouting as a possible landing place for planes and putting in an air base. They never did that, but they had this report. And they got to the caves, and sure enough, Gina was able to find flowstone. On that expedition, they documented 26 caves, collecting 16 samples of calcite, 3 water samples, some sediments, a bone and a feather. There was lots of mummified animals in these caves. I think the bird was like 60,000 years old. On this trip, we found a log, and that log was over 50,000 years old. Anyway, the calcite records that Gina had went back, there's a 0 missing there, went back from 400 to 550,000 years. So you can take that paleoclimate, the ancient climate record, now you can jump back 400,000 years to 500,000 years and actually get a record of what the climate was doing in that period. So Gina took that information and she wrote a grant, and she received the SMART award from the Austrian Science Foundation. That gave her a professorship at the University of Innsbruck, and what she was able to do was put a team together for this year to go back. Now she's got to do the same thing. We've got to shuttle people to this Sondrestrom So, then get them to the caves, and the amount of money it costs to charter all those planes, it costs as much to send 4 people as it does to send 10 people. So she wrote some emails to some cave scientists and said, would you like to come? I got an email. It took me about a second and a half to go, yes, please. So I got to go. This is me here. Paul is Gina's graduate student. Here's Gina. Robbie is, if you don't know Robbie Schoen, he's a National Geographic photographer. Chris Blakely actually is one of the professional trainers from Petzl, which is really kind of cool to hang out with Petzl in these caves. Adam Ignesi is he studies ancient glaciers from the University of Sheffield, as does Andrew Soule. Paul Smith from the University of Oxford was one of the original mappers of the geology in this area. And then Pete Hodgkinson was our medic, so we had an on-site doctor. We needed one for the insurance for this trip. And then these 2 people here, you see pilot and mechanic. We had our own helicopter, so we had a pilot and a mechanic as part of our team. And so that was why this was such a big expedition, is before, if they wanted to get to the caves and study the caves, they had to literally work their way. They were out there for 3 weeks, and it took them a week and a half to get to where they needed to do their research. They had 2 days on the ground, and then they had to hustle back to catch the plane. What we were able to do was get a helicopter, and we did pretty much everything by helicopter. So Gina was able to rent a helicopter and a pilot and a mechanic for 3 weeks for this expedition. Now the pilot can only fly 8 hours a day, and we were 2.5 hours north of where the pilot was housed. So what would happen is we'd have no helicopter for 5 days, and then the helicopter would come out and join us for 3 days. Then he'd go back, and 5 days later he'd come out again. And what we would do is we'd go find as much as we could with the helicopter, and then he'd take off. We'd do a lot of stuff on foot, and then the helicopter would show up again. The helicopter also let us move camps. We had 3 different base camps during the expedition. This is Gina prepping. So we were going to be so far north, and we had so much gear that had to go into the field. We had about 2,000 kilograms or 4,400 pounds of gear. So that all had to go up by boat. So it had to be packed and sent 6 months in advance to get to the main base station at Danmarkshavn, which is the weather station, to be there when we arrived. They also had to ship all the fuel for the helicopter and the planes, because there's no fueling, there's no station there. So everything had to be shipped by boat and kind of ferried to where we needed it. This is where I was going to go. This is what it looked like 2 weeks before we're going to go. So this is when I went to REI and bought a -20 sleeping bag, which is rated survivable down to -44, because it was about -20 at the site 2 weeks before. And then this was the last satellite image we got 2 days before we left, but the lake was still frozen. Okay, so this is us. We went from Reykjavik. We took a commercial flight to Akureyri, which is the last commercial airport that we could get to. Then we rented a twin otter. So we basically had our own plane for 3 days. This is flying from Iceland to Greenland across the sea. You can see all the icebergs. And then this is Constable Point. This is us landing at Constable Point. This was a U.S. military air base that was established in Greenland. It actually has a Hilton. That building on the end is a Hilton, and it is a -1-star Hilton. The toilet is literally a black garbage bag kind of over this basin with a toilet seat strapped on top of it, and they actually call it the Hilton. It's a Hilton. So we went from Constable Point to Danmarkshavn. So this is the last place we could actually fuel the plane with a regular fuel dump. And then we're getting further north, so more glacier, more ice, and just spectacular scenery. It's really a wild landscape. So Constable Point is basically the last inhabited area on this side of Greenland. Danmarkshavn is the most northerly point where people live, which is this weather station. And this is it. It's quite famous because it's one of these like epic Arctic stations where like a ship got shipwrecked and people had to eat like seals and like polar bears and stuff. Anyway, there's great history there, and there's a little museum. But there's 5 people there, and when we showed up, they're like, "Okay, girls, be careful. None of these guys have seen a girl in 9 months." Anyway, we landed. We got all of our stuff off the plane, and then the plane had to go from Constable Point to Trop Fuel at the furthest north point because we needed fuel up there for the helicopter. We also needed fuel so the plane could get back. So they literally went up there on a fuel dump, and they ended up doing 2 fuel dumps just so there was enough fuel where we were going to do all the shuttling of the helicopter to the plane. This is baggage handling in Danmarkshavn. So they were like, just throw it in the digger, we'll be fine. So they were all excited that we were there. This is unpacking the shipping container that had all those boxes in it. You can see our fuel stacked in there as well. So this is doing inventory and making sure we have everything that we were supposed to have. We did see polar bears. This was the first place we saw polar bears. And it's kind of funny because we were there with a bunch of Brits, and I was the only person that ever spent any time in bear country. And so I'm like super careful about not having my toothpaste in my tent, and there's no food, and everything's downwind. And these guys have food and toothpaste, and I was really worried about it. But it doesn't matter. They're not like grizzly bears. These guys eat animals. They don't scavenge berries and things because there's nothing up there. If they see you moving, they're going to run over and eat you. So we'll have a little bit about that. So we went from Danmarkshavn up to Centrum. So this is in the plane looking out, and this is what we got to see. This is the 2nd biggest glacier in the world, second only to one in Antarctica. It's 40 miles across. It's breaking up. And then this is Centrum. So this is kind of coming in to land, and this is the landing strip that we use. So that's that lake. And this is the plane coming into land. You see some of our fuel already dumped. And then unpacking, so getting everything out of the plane. And then the helicopter showed up about 20 minutes later, and we had to get everything in the helicopter to start shuttling it over to the first camp. So this first camp was that camp. It took them 50 miles round trip of hiking to get to. We jumped in the helicopter. It took 10 minutes to get there. We had to go back and forth. The helicopter had to fuel up a couple of times. This is the helicopter taking off with the first load, and then checking out the landscape. This is all limestone here in these valleys. Oh, I should point out the gun here. We don't go anywhere without the gun. You couldn't even go to the toilet without a gun because of the polar bears. So we actually have polar bear training. We have to like practice shooting these things. These are high-powered rifles with armor-piercing bullets. And the reason we have to have armor-piercing bullets is that the hair of a polar bear is hollow, and it acts a bit like a bulletproof vest. And they also give you training like where to shoot, and there's like a list of 12 steps. When you get to 12 steps, you can shoot. But basically, it's like, is it charging? Because they're an endangered species, and they don't want you just being like, oh, bear bang. So, but yeah, like going to the toilet, it was like you had to pick up a gun and go with you to the toilet. We had either rifles or we had these they were like flare guns that explode. And what you would do is you'd shoot it, and the idea was to land it right in front of the polar bear, and it would bang really loudly, and the polar bear would run away. And they were like very specific about when you shoot this thing, shoot it in front of the polar bear and not behind the polar bear. So this is our first camp. So this is the food tent and the food storage, and this is about 100 yards or 300 feet downwind from where we were sleeping. This is in the food tent, and there you can see where we're camped. And this was our goal, this cliff here, and there were caves all along this cliff. And this was our bear fence. So this is something I've never experienced in bear country. These are rape alarms. So the idea is if you're raped, you pull this thing, and it makes this ear-piercing squeal. And what we did is have these posts all around camp with the string. And if a bear kind of wandered in, it would trip this, and it gives you 3 seconds to get out the tent with a gun. and everybody had a loaded rifle in their tent. And I think, maybe if I can turn the sound up, and I don't know if you can hear this, I don't know if I have the sound up, but you can. So that gives you about 3 seconds. So basically, get up and get the gun ready. And there are enough guns for everybody to have one in their tent. And this is something I've never experienced before. This is a Schoen throne. So Robbie Schoen is a world-famous photographer. I didn't know he was a world-famous latrine builder. So this is the latrine for camp. Camp is on the far side, and he makes a big effort of so there's basically somewhere to sit, and there's a hole, and he digs a big pit, and there's a footrest and everything. And then you can sit there, and you can enjoy the view, and there's a gun there, or you're there. So this is the photo from the original expedition. We were interested in Ice Palace here, and U-shaped cave here. Getting to them was pretty epic. You can see there's this isn't the one we were after, but there's a cave there. So there was an awful lot of scrambling and hiking around. Really steep scree. I was okay on scree. I used to live in Colorado, so it was kind of okay on scree. Now I am a scree professional. I can ski double black diamond scree after this expedition. And then we had to traverse around some of it super exposed big cliffs, so we would rig it. And you can see just working our way around. And this is the view out of the cave entrance into that valley again. And we ended up exploring caves all around here on this far side. And this is from the cave looking back down towards camp, so you can see where the tents are. You can see, you can't quite see it, the food hut is around here. There's our helicopter. And this was an experiment to catch mosquitoes and see what kind of mosquitoes there were. This is looking into Crystal Palace. And this is sampling in Crystal Palace. There's Gina and Paul with some flowstone, and there is Chris sectioning flowstone because we have to hand carry it back down. The helicopter pilot really wanted to do this thing called slinging, where he'd hover in front of the entrance and kind of throw this thing in, and we'd wrap a boulder to it, and we'd sling it out, and we were just like, these are super precious samples. We don't really want to see this fly into the valley below. But this is what the caves were really amazing for, and this is ice, this is frost. And so we figured out there's this weird circulation, the caves kind of breathe, and I've got some other pictures that show it in a little bit more detail, but you'll actually get this hoarfrost, right? So this is kind of the frost you might see in a super, maybe not around here, but super cold, super humid environment. But this hoarfrost would be like, as long as your finger is sticking out the wall. And the photographer would be like, whatever you do, don't touch it, because you've got to get photos of it before we smush it with our backs. Here's me. So I was surveying all the caves, and this is me with my phone. I was doing everything with digital survey. And that cave was about 12 degrees Fahrenheit, and my phone kept freezing. So you'd have to come out and stick your phone down your top to warm your phone up before going back in the cave. This is sample processing. We got a lot of calcite out of this cave. So this is, we were working on Crystal Palace, which is right in there. And then we wanted to get to this cave here, and there's another cave here. So what we ended up doing, camp is right in here. We walked around the front, and then one up this surface here. So you can see, this is me and Pete walking up these steps. It's the most eroded limestone landscape I've ever seen. And it's just so aggressive there with the freezing and thawing. Kind of broken up. And we got up into cairn caves. You can see Chris doing a free climb to get up into there, and he rigged a rope so we could get up. And this is Gina climbing up. Again, you can look out into the valley. And we called it cairn cave because there was a cairn there, so the geologists climbed up this thing to get in there and actually left the cairn. There was nothing inside it. A lot of times they'll build these things for you to find inside, but there was nothing in there. And then there's this ice plug at the back. And that was a thing that we kept finding, is these caves would go maybe 100, 120 feet, and then you'd hit this ice plug. And you could see into the ice 6, 7, 8 feet, and you could see the passage still going. but the ice was kind of being extruded. So you've almost got this, the dripping ice, the dripping water is kind of coalescing into this big ice block that's pushing out. It's probably being dried by the weather and kind of pushed back, but basically the caves always ended in ice. Then we moved camp. Oh no, actually, yeah, we moved camp. And while we were moving camp, the pilot got bored and he found this canyon and he started flying up and down the canyon. And he said, I think I found something. And it was a pretty remarkable canyon. It's in, I think, where are we here? So it's right up in here. And so we would go up there and we'd spot caves. So we just take the helicopter. We're like, okay, Stig, go up here. His name is Stig. Go up here, Stig. Go up here, Stig. And we were ridge walking by helicopter. And having spent a couple of weeks ridge walking by helicopter, I will never walk anywhere ever again, especially after this last week. But he'd actually kind of like hover right in front of the entrance, and you could kind of peer at it with binoculars and decide if you were going to go back. But a lot of times he'd just plop the helicopter down in front. This was one that Stig found while he was out on his own. We call it Kate's Cove after his wife. That turned out to be the longest cave in Greenland. It's about 350 feet long. And it's got this ice here, and that's critical. If you see ice like that at the entrance, you know that's going to be a big cave. So he plopped the helicopter down so we could walk up. And then this is the entrance. We ended up having to rig a rope because this ice is super, super smooth. And it melted, and there was a big kind of puddle here. And if you slipped, it would just slide you straight into that puddle. And Gina actually fell in a couple of times. And this cave was, I think the ambient temperature was 1 degree Fahrenheit. So this is the coldest cave in the world. So if you fall in here and get soaking wet, your clothing starts to freeze to you while you're in the cave. In addition to this ice here, we start to see that frost line. And that turned out to be something significant. Whenever you found this frost line near an entrance and that ice right at the front, it was significant length for Greenland, right? A 300-foot cave is not too big for here, but in Greenland, that's a really big cave. And this is the frost line that you get, and it's like someone's taken a knife and sliced through the frost. There's nothing below it, it's dry, and above it, it's all this amazing frost. And I took a thermometer, and right at that line is 0 degrees centigrade. Below it is about -6, -7 degrees centigrade, and above it is about +5 degrees centigrade. So what we think is there's a circulation loop of air, and cold air is flowing in from the entrance and pushing warm air from the back of the cave out that's humid, and that humid air is just freezing to the surface of the rock. So it's cold and dry here, so any ice that forms kind of gets lyophilized, it gets dried out. But if there's any moisture in the air, it freezes to the surface of the rock, and you get this amazing frost line. And you can see it's just like someone sliced it with a razor, and it's right at 0 degrees centigrade. And this is Gina. Every picture we have of Gina in this cave, she's moving because she's soaking wet. You can see it was actually a pretty, and down there is where it was 1 degree Fahrenheit. We recorded it over several days. And then this is a further around from camp, looking up out the valley. Paul's looking down because the helicopter's just dropped off, and the helicopter just landed here. And we went to look at this thing. You see Paul there. This is, we call that Swirly Cave. The pilot, it's actually kind of a phreatic meander, and the pilot said it was swirling, so we called it Swirly Cave. This is us. It got to be this is going to sound awful, but it got to be the point where the helicopter kind of felt like the car. So we just like take the helicopter over and have lunch, and then go explore a cave, and go back in the helicopter, go over here, get out, do some stuff. So this is us having a picnic by the helicopter. And the helicopter's parked there because we found this cave from the helicopter, and we called it Stig Strikes Again because it was another really significant cave that Stig found from the air. Again, as you go in, there's an ice plug at the back of the cave, but I was the first person in, and I got here and I saw a passage going off, and when I looked down the passage, I saw that frost line, so I knew it went. So this is, again, that frost sticking out about 4 to 5 inches. And there was a crawl at the back, and I actually was able to dig it out. It wasn't too bad, it was about 10 inches high. I was able to crawl out, and came up right here where Chris is, and then I saw this, and this is ice. You see the ice there? It's like this huge bubble of ice coming out. So I popped up under this bubble of ice. It looked like this huge soap bubble, and you can see back about 10 feet. It's perfectly clear. And you see this? This is a rock stuck to the ice. And as this ice is moving, it's picked up a rock, and it's just taking the rock with it. Now this ice was perfectly clear, and I was in there with Paul, the graduate student, who wasn't a caver, and he was kind of freaking out a little bit in the crawl. So I backed in as far as I could to give him room to move around, and I actually nudged it with my shoulder, and I was like, Robbie is going to kill me. And then I tried to smooth away it, and it got a lot worse, so you can see where I'm trying to. So it's actually an amazing bubble with a big smear in it, so he never took the amazing bubble photograph. But you can see it from a different angle here. You can see the edge of that bubble. It was super alien to look into this thing. The other thing we did is we took the helicopter over to here. This is a limestone outcrop, and it had these two caves in it. This cave actually went through. There was a dig in the middle, so we couldn't do the through trip. But we parked the helicopter here, went down, surveyed it, and then walked around and surveyed it from the other side, and then worked our way over to here. So this is like 81 degrees north. So this is the world's most northerly mapped cave, and this is the world's most northerly explored cave. This only went 30 feet, so we never mapped it. So there you go, world's most, you can almost see to the back. But this is Crystal Palace. Again, we've got that ice at the entrance, and then we have that frost line. And the frost was absolutely amazing in this cave. There were hexagonal plates of ice that sat out from the wall the size of dinner plates. It was just really spectacular. And it actually kind of went, and we went down to this dig. And then we moved camp, so loading up the helicopter again. We went from this camp up here down to a camp right in here by this lake to explore these canyons again. We were able to go up and down with the helicopter, find the caves, and then go back on foot. Robbie taking some photos. And we went to, the only significant cave we found up here was Rock de Porter, which is the deepest cave in Greenland. It's about 145 feet deep. It actually has an entrance way up here. You can see people popped out the entrance and waving. And this is on the inside looking out. So you start to get a feel for Greenland caves. Now remember, we're not here for the caves, we're here for the flowstone. So this is Gina and Chris, again, kind of a meandering cave. This was the second camp. Gina decided that she wanted to cook everybody a fancy dessert, an Austrian dessert. So this is her trying to cook Austrian dessert, and here's the Austrian looking at her efforts. And then the helicopter came back again and took us back to where Kate's Cove was. So this is us now set up. The team got slightly smaller because somebody was getting married and had to go home to get married, and a couple of the geologists went with them. So it's basically down to cavers at this point, so there's fewer tents. This is how, it was getting later and it was getting harder to find water. So this took 3 of us. There was actually some snow melting up there, and there's this tiny little trickle of water. We were able to construct an actual tap there, so we had water. Another Shone throne was built. This was really nice. It was made of sandstone. These blocks here are sandstone, so it was really warm on your bottom. And this was the view from the toilet. This was my favorite view of the whole trip. You can see the glaciers looking north. And then this was the kind of terrain that we were hiking. So the helicopter were able to GPS where all the caves were, and then we had to kind of tackle this kind of landscape. Lots of walking up the valley, lots of slipping into the water, lots of climbing up to get to caves. This is, at one point we couldn't find one of the caves, so Robbie had a drone. He was doing drone footage, so he sent the drone up to look for the cave. And by this point in the expedition, Gina was exhausted, so Gina actually fell asleep on Robbie while he was flying the drone. Just more caves that we found. And then the landscapes pretty crazy. I mean, the high during the day was about 34 degrees. But you know, cryptobiotic soils, there's some cryptobiotic soils around here where you have to be like super careful where you step. And when we got out of the helicopter the first time, I'm like, oh my God, everybody, these are cryptobiotic soils. Do not stand anywhere. And I made everybody kind of walk on the rocks, and everybody's doing this. And by the end of the expedition, we're just like chomp, chomp, chomp. The entire landscape is cryptobiotic soil. You can see it here. It's just everywhere. You can't really avoid it. And then if it's not cryptobiotic soil, it's just completely frost-shattered rock. I mean, it's just an incredibly harsh environment. And we're 1,000 miles from the closest people at this point. But you can see there's caves that we were, polar caves that we were getting to. Okay, science. Gina was able to collect the cores that she wanted to. I can't remember if we got a specific list of how many samples she got. She got something like 127 samples of calcite, so here's her logging them. The most recent data is that they're all older than 600,000 years. So we've got an even older paleoclimate data. I was doing microbiology, so we've got microbes precipitating calcite. This was something really cool. This is something called phytokarst, and it's really only ever been described in tropical areas. When I was in Borneo this year, I was actually studying phytokarst, and it should only be found in tropical areas. And this was phytokarst forming within these caves. So it's completely changed our understanding of this phytokarst, which is made by photosynthetic bacteria in cave entrances. And then there's this weird mineral that we found. This is some kind of weird manganese oxide. This was really cool. I noticed this in every single cave that we went in. And it's super fine. We think what it is it's a, when you have air condensing, you get water droplets. As those water droplets freeze, the calcite precipitates, and you build up these tiny little fingers. So these are probably a type of frostwork, which are created by freezing water. So we've called it cryogenic frostwork. Anyway, this is all the samples. This is Gina looking very happy. The samples got prioritized on the way back. The records that we broke while we were there: world's most northerly explored cave, surveyed cave, the longest cave in Greenland, the deepest cave in Greenland, and possibly the world's coldest cave. We've been talking to a lot of people like Derek Ford, trying to find any record of any cave that's colder than this, like Siberia and in the Himalaya and everything. And there may be, but no one ever measured the temperature. We are the most furtherly north in one of the harshest climates, so we think this is probably the world's coldest cave. I think maybe, is that the, traveling back, basically do everything in reverse, although we're obviously a little bit more exhausted there. And then, of course, thanks go to Gina Mosley for, it was a very expensive, it's like a $450,000 expedition to go up there, and Gina was able to get the money to put that together. So thanks to Gina for making this all happen. That's it. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah. This was really cool. I noticed this in every single cave that we went in. And it's super fine. We think what it is it's a, when you have air condensing, you get water droplets. As those water droplets freeze, the calcite precipitates, and you build up these tiny little fingers. So these are probably a type of frostwork, which are created by freezing water. So we've called it cryogenic frostwork. Anyway, this is all the samples. This is Gina looking very happy. The samples got prioritized on the way back. The records that we broke while we were there: world's most northerly explored cave, surveyed cave, the longest cave in Greenland, the deepest cave in Greenland, and possibly the world's coldest cave. We've been talking to a lot of people like Derek Ford, trying to find any record of any cave that's colder than this, like Siberia and in the Himalaya and everything. And there may be, but no one ever measured the temperature. We are the most furtherly north in one of the harshest climates, so we think this is probably the world's coldest cave. I think maybe, is that the, traveling back, basically do everything in reverse, although we're obviously a little bit more exhausted there. And then, of course, thanks go to Gina Mosley for, it was a very expensive, it's like a $450,000 expedition to go up there, and Gina was able to get the money to put that together. So thanks to Gina for making this all happen. That's it. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
Cavers to the call, me boys, we're cavers to the call. As you play and sing, don't forget one thing, we're cavers to the call.
Greenland is it's a protectorate of Denmark, but we were in a national park, so we got our permits through their national park system. Yeah.
What's the age of the limestone?
450 million years. It's a pretty old limestone, yeah. And that landscape is, I've never seen limestone kind of like you know, like it just looks old, you know. It's been an exposed area. And the thing is, it's kind of a dry area, so everywhere around it is ice. But there's something about how the glaciers get pushed that they just basically miss it. So you have this one area of like the dry valleys in Antarctica where you get cold air blowing down and also the glaciers miss it. But there's no wildlife out there. We saw two birds, and I remember one time a bird flew through camp and everybody stopped to look at it because we hadn't seen an animal like the entire time. So it was pretty wild.
You showed data on the growth of the glaciers and the melt, but it was only 1 year. How did that
That was actually a 1,000-year record.
Oh, that was
yeah,
1,000?
that's over.
Okay.
Yeah. So like,
But
like
so-
100.
It's
Greenland is it's a protectorate of Denmark, but we were in a national park, so we got our permits through their national park system. Yeah.
What's the age of the limestone?
450 million years. It's a pretty old limestone, yeah. And that landscape is, I've never seen limestone kind of like you know, like it just looks old, you know. It's been an exposed area. And the thing is, it's kind of a dry area, so everywhere around it is ice. But there's something about how the glaciers get pushed that they just basically miss it. So you have this one area of like the dry valleys in Antarctica where you get cold air blowing down and also the glaciers miss it. But there's no wildlife out there. We saw two birds, and I remember one time a bird flew through camp and everybody stopped to look at it because we hadn't seen an animal like the entire time. So it was pretty wild.
You showed data on the growth of the glaciers and the melt, but it was only 1 year. How did that
That was actually a 1,000-year record.
Oh, that was
Yeah,
1,000?
that's
Oh,
over.
okay.
Yeah. So like
But
like
so-
100, like
but so-
110,000.
But it was for the full year.
No, what you get is so the ice is super compressed, like a full year's summer or winter ice might be like 2 millimeters thick, and they'll come and they'll
But
pull
it
that.
showed month by month.
No, those were year to year to year.
Oh, those were
Yeah,
year to
so
year.
up and down is like the winter and the summer, or winter or summer, yeah.
So then, in the summer, it is showing a small trend. Yes?
A small
Trend of deceleration, or
acceleration.
increase-
No,
acceleration.
it's
acceleration.
yeah, you'll see, I know the graph you're talking about. Yeah, there's like a dramatic speed up of the glaciers right now in those areas. Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah. The photographers of this show, is this a combination of a bunch of you guys?
Yeah, some of mine, some are Robbie, some are Paul, the geologist from the University of Oxford, was an amazing one. The doctor took amazing photographs with his iPhone. Yeah, so it was like a lot of people. Yeah.
Where's this going to be published?
Oh, Gina's got loads of places that she's gonna. I think Dave Linnell's asked me to write something up for the NSS News, but we're gonna have a whole expedition report, and also we're gonna. We've got, I think, 12 different scientific papers that we're gonna put together for the BCRA journal in the UK. Is that my phone? I'm sorry. Probably my husband.
Well, if it's going to be anyone's phone, it's best that it was yours.
Yeah, I know. It's like really embarrassing. It'll stop. I thought I turned it off. So, yeah.
Are questions restricted to this presentation?
No.
How can Rose become one of your students when she goes to college in a couple of years?
She'll have to apply to the University of Akron for
Okay.
the biology or geology program.
You want to go to Akron?
No. All right. Oh, yes.
The polar bears, that's what I'd like to spend.
So we couldn't get enough power out there, right? And the polar bear's just gonna get pissed off. Yeah, like they were like, if you shoot the bear, shoot to kill. Don't. If you hit it anywhere else, you're just gonna make it angry. Because people are like, well, what if you hit it in the head? It's like you're not gonna penetrate that skull. Go for the heart or just run, right? So as long as you can run faster than the slowest person, you might be okay. But there's 3 years before we were there was they have college trips up there for the glacier. They do a lot of glaciology, and there was a college trip up there, and one of the students actually got eaten by a polar bear. And what happened is their polar bear fence, they hadn't kept the rope taut, and it kind of just slung low, and the polar bear just walked right over the top of it, So the first they knew there was a polar bear in camp was when it swiped this kid right out of the pen. So yeah, pretty great.
And you said this was a national park, but there's nobody goes to it? It's like there's no one around?
Well, it's so difficult to get there. I mean, Damaktavan, we were the first visitors they'd had in nine months. So yeah, it's incredibly hard to get there. There's no commercial way of getting there. You can get there by boat, but you're in the Arctic Ocean at that point. Yeah.
2 questions. How many caves did you map, and are you the cartographer for those?
40 caves were explored, 12 were mapped. I am the cartographer. So I'll put them in the slum next year. Yeah, but I put them in the Hidden Earth conference this year because they're only 300-foot caves. Even though they were beautiful maps, I didn't win anything.
What was the elevation of the area?
Oh, we were close to sea level. So like I said, the glacier is, I think it's like 3,000, maybe 4,000 feet thick, and you can like roof up to the edge of it, and then you just keep going up gradually. But where we were not far from the ocean, so I don't think the elevation was probably more than a couple of thousand feet. But the air is pretty thin there because you're at the pole, so it didn't feel too bad, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 feet. So it wasn't terribly noticeable apart from when you were going up, and it could be that you're just going up, or it could be from the air pressure.
I'm sure you said this, but when was this?
July.
Okay.
Yeah. Anytime.
And may I ask about tomorrow? You're starting a trip tomorrow, right? Into
Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah.
So you're doing an 8-day trip into Lech?
Yep. Yep.
Is it a mapping trip or?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep.
The sun never set over there.
No, it was awesome. So the sun didn't set, and it was terrible because you could be in the cave till 10 o'clock at night, and then kind of come down, and it was the same as if you were in the cave at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There was no pressure to get back. And when you're in your tent and you wake up in the night, you can kind of figure out what time it is based on where the sun is relative to your tent. Yeah. But it never got like, temperature-wise, it was like a little bit cooler at night and a little bit warmer in the day, but barely noticeable. One day we got up to like 15 degrees centigrade, which was like 58, which was like super warm, but most of the time it's like 34, 36. Yeah, which is why you really wanted to have sandstone blocks on the toilet. So yeah. Right.
Thank you very much. Okay. We'll dive into some cave news. Rick here today? No Rick today? I've just been including this slide for any county search and rescue because they're always recruiting, and there's meeting times up there, second Tuesday of every month. Getting some caving news. Once again, if you're under 26 or under, there's a reduced rate for the NSS membership. That is a never expiring offer. You just have to call the NSS office. Fort Stanton Cave recently added 3.24 miles, so it's up to 37.9 miles long. And that does make it, correct me if I'm wrong, it's now the second longest cave in New Mexico?
Yeah, past Carlsbad.
I figured I'd put in, does anyone remember the story about baby Jessica? For anyone who may not know or remember from 32 years ago, baby Jessica went down well. So we just had the 32nd year anniversary. And I threw this in there because one of our Pecos Valley Grotto members was on the rescue of baby Jessica. Bill Bentley was not able to make it to tonight's meeting. He said he regretted that he was not able to come tonight. But Bill Bentley was I believe the second person down the rescue shack to try to retrieve baby Jessica. And Jessica, she's 5 months older than me. She works with special ed students now, so cavers were involved in that rescue. Speaking of rescues, Christopher Jewell, he was one of the cave divers on the Thailand boys, the soccer team cave rescue, and he was just awarded an award from the Queen, the Gallantry Medal for bravery. One of our Pecos Valley Grotto members is currently being featured at the museum. We just got our photos up, I believe, 2 days ago, and it's probably going to be there for at least 2 months. So when you come into the museum, there's a local feature, a local artist feature just to the left in there, and Melissa's work will be featured for probably the next 2 months at least. And a good amount of it's cave photography. We'll be saying aloha to our secretary, who is Terry, who is not here tonight. And I'll include that in the new things and old things. But Gabe has volunteered to fill in. We can vote on it if you want to. But Chris and Laurel are going to Hawaii. They got a job with a national park in Hawaii. So we'll be saying aloha to them soon. Convention, once again, is in West Virginia. And then the next 2 years are also decided upon California and South Dakota. Does anybody have any other just general caving news they think should be mentioned?
Well, the Southwestern Region Winter Tech will be Saturday, December 7th in Las Cruces.
Okay,
So put that on your calendar.
thank you. Saturday, December
7th.
7th. Got that, Gabe?
Yeah.
Hey, Dave,
Yes, sir.
a little more detail about that Fort Stanton survey. Gary Jorgensen, actually on one trip, surveyed 2.27 miles in one passage. And he came within just a short distance of one of the old historic parts of the cave where there's a dig. And had they done that dig back in the 50s when they first explored it, they would have discovered Snowy River and the whole rest of the cave.
Right.
They didn't. And so now it looks like they're finding it from the other side. But off of this new passage, there is just walking passages all over the place, some of them 20 feet high. And so they're thinking it's going to be a pretty big discovery. And Fort Stanton Cave is just going to continue to grow. I think it's going to outpace Carlsbad and stay ahead of Carlsbad as far as survey goes. It's really big stuff going on there.
So, Rod, I was just wondering, are they still surveying the fourth story plan?
Yes.
Because my understanding is there's some leads that go directly to the private.
Right.
And
Isn't
then
it close to the airport, too?
Right.
There are portions that go under the airport. The Forest Service land, they need a separate permit for the Forest Service. So they get BLM permit to enter the cave. And then if the trip is going to extend into forest, then they need a Forest Service permit as well from either the district ranger or the forest supervisor. And then under private land, there's landowners.
And what is the situation with the airport and permission required there?
Not to my knowledge, any specific.
upper parts, Fort Stanton are still flooded, Snowy River, so they can't explore there. But this new area, there's so much, they don't even need to go. They need to go.
And so
To the end
those
now.
upper portions, I was gonna say when we got to our recent trips, but took part in a trip that we were gonna do to reestablish the Midnight Junction camp, which hasn't been camped at since 2014. So me, John Lyle, Garrett Jorgensen, and Brian Kendrick headed up there and got almost to Finger Lake. So we got 3/4 of the way to Midnight Junction, and it appeared that Snowy River was starting a new flood, but we're not entirely sure. It could be small scale, it might not go the whole way, and it could just be remnants from the last one. So there's definitely some weird hydrologic things, and we never actually made it out to Midnight Junction because of that.
Our treasurer and secretary are not here tonight. So treasurer and secretary reports. For a secretary report, we can at least mention that, last month's meeting was the auction. We made over $1,300 at the auction. So that was
Everybody?
Any old business anyone would like to address? We had some cavers in the area, and they were apparently trying to get a hold of grotto members. And so the old business I think we should mention is that, and I guess this is my bad, we need to update contact info. They said they went to the website, and Jamie Moon is still listed, chairman. I don't even know how to update the website.
Bill
'Cause
Bentley.
Bentley does that.
Yeah, Bill Bentley
Okay,
was is the last known webmaster.
okay.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if I'll be the chairman in a few more months, but, because it's been 2 years now, but we'll see. But we need, we need to get on that, updating the website and our contact information. I guess Phyllis did end up they were able to get a hold of Phyllis, and she took them caving. Any new business anyone would like to address? Does anyone oppose Gabe being our substitute secretary for the remainder of the year? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Gabe.
Got a bit of new business. I think it's probably time for us to make a donation to Nickery, since it's been about a year since we did that. So I make a motion that we donate $400 to Nickery.
It's been a year? Yeah, that sounds right. Is anyone opposed or suggest otherwise?
What about one of the case conservancies? Sorry, I'm not part of it.
That's okay.
As vice chair of the board of Nickery, what about case conservancy?
I think this is for using the facility, basically.
Is that right?
Yeah, because George lets us have our meetings here.
Well, waiting for Phyllis, or the treasurer to be present.
Yeah.
Right.
What was last year's donation?
Last year's donation was
300.
300? I'm in support of it, but we probably should wait until we have our secretary here as well, I guess.
Treasury report.
What's that?
We need an accurate treasury report.
Yeah.
Sure.
So let's make sure that we address that next meeting. Does that sound fair to everyone?
As one of the members of the board of the Black Hills Cave Conservancy, maybe 300 to Nickery and 100 to the Black Hills Cave Conservancy, that's run by Santa Grotto. They're trying to buy, there's a piece of land that's got like 17 caves on it in the Black Hills, which is highly unusual. And one of them is actually, you know this area well?
Oh, yeah.
Can you speak to it? What's the name of the cave on it? There's like,
Yeah, it's really highly decorated.
anyway,
I don't remember anymore.
Anyway, they're like a brand new organization, and they're trying to buy this piece of land and make it an innocent preserve. So anyway,
Oh,
I'm
that'd be
also a
awesome.
board member of that.
It'll come back to me shortly.
All right, so, once again, since our treasurer's not here, we'll discuss it once she's here, but Gabe, got that recommendation / suggestion from our presenter, also member of the board.
If you make it 100, I will match it. How's that?
Got all that, Gabe?
You got the matching part in there too?
And Aria will make sure. No.
We were on that.
Just an extra zero.
I do not do.
T-shirts are also up here if anyone wants to get a t-shirt afterwards. Any other new business anyone would like to address?
It is money related, so we'll have to wait, but Ellen and I have talked, and we'd like to see if we could propose a scholarship for people that have never been to a convention that have a current NSS membership. Because we don't want just someone that hasn't been. We want someone to say, hey, I'm willing to spend a few money, to be an NSS member to go. We'd like to go. We'd like to see if we could get someone sent to next year.
Right. Because we used to do that
Yep.
as a drawing,
Yep.
and then often person whose name would get drawn
Yeah, they just didn't have
didn't
time.
go or
so.
didn't want to
We
go.
want to do
Or,
a scholarship, submit a letter why we should, choose those persons.
yeah, that is a very neat idea.
But we would like them to be NSS members.
So proposed scholarship for NSS members to attend convention. Okay. Any other new business? Trip reports. Anyone go caving in the last 2 months? Because we didn't have trip reports last month because of the auction. We should have a whole bunch. Angelina?
Yeah, there was a trip to Chimney Cave last week, and I just want to give a shout out to Emily and Collins, because it was their first time on Burlington Cave, and they both did great.
Any other trip reports?
We did a mock rescue in mid-September in Wen and Slaughter Caves. And both Gabe and myself were patients, and we were rescued. And everyone got some good practice. Had some guys from the fire department come out as well. And had some kind of different scenarios and stuff working over at Slaughter compared to one of the closer caves or locations.
Interesting that half our officers for the grotto are being rescued from
Mock
rescue.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And then I also went to the Grand Canyon, originally as part of the kind of yearly Grand Canyon caving expedition. And due to fires and stuff, they had to really shorten the expedition. So it was only going to be a small group of 4 of us to go do some lead checking. And it's very, very remote, like the most remote part of the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Unfortunately, we determined that it was an impossible task because we couldn't cache enough water for the distance that we had to go and for the days that we wanted to be out.
Get a helicopter.
So yeah, we actually need a helicopter as we determined. So we literally hiked down, cached our water, got back up, and the next morning determined that it was going to be impossible. And then the next day went down and got our water back. So quite a bit of off-trail up and down hiking in the Grand Canyon, and no caving, but maybe one day we'll get back out there.
Dwayne Gepper, Ellen, and myself, we recently did a trip down to the Cancun area, Tulum, Riviera Maya. We did some cave diving. We'll get into 5 caves. Yeah, long days, 12 hours pretty much most of the time. Good training.
Which grade did you do?
They're the
Different cenotes.
yeah, there's the no-take caves,
Phenomena.
Taj Mahal,
La
La Concha.
Still those?
No, that's
No,
closed
no.
right now. They have had a few deaths in the recent past. I know I'm wearing the Dos Ojos shirt right now, but sorry, that one's closed. They've had some deaths, so that's kind of closing them for
You did a
now.
car wash?
Not this time. Thank God, I've been in that thing so many times. But you know, we got a chance to go down there. Working with landowners down there this time was a little bit tricky. You basically have to bribe them a few times, you know. But you know, there are still places that are open and that are set up as commercial businesses. But the La Concha that hasn't been in.
That was a pretty good cave.
Yeah, it's pretty, and it was
private
just
people.
untouched. You know, people haven't been in it for years, and you know, it's back in the jungle. Lots of mosquitoes. Ellen and I are fighting infection right now from it. It's awesome. But you know, we, you know, obviously there's a stigma about cave diving that it's, you know, dangerous, and it is, but I don't think it's any more dangerous than dry caving. I mean, you're going underground to a place where we're not supposed to be. So.
Super conservative.
Yeah,
Really.
So to take Dwayne, he'll take you on a 10-minute dive, and you won't have to worry, or you won't leave the actual cenote itself. But it takes a lot of equipment, as you saw from her trip. You know, sending down 6 months in advance. That would have been awesome, but we show up at the last minute, and all right, what do we have to make it work? Okay, give me your piece, we'll tie them together, and sometimes that's what it takes. But a lot of beautiful caves. You can just imagine seeing the caves that you love floating. You know, never touching, never disturbing. It's worth it.
I did a little caving with Mike Mansur last month. I did a restoration trip with him just a little ways into Lech, and I did a restoration trip with him, was that just yesterday, into second parallel Cottonwood Caves. So learned a lot from Mr. Mansur. Anyone else go caving?
I kind of did. In Virginia, and went to Bristol Caverns.
Yeah, I love that cave.
If you have never been to Bristol Caverns, pretty nice cave. But I first went and met the owner, and then got him to give me a tour, and then he, of course, took me to the parts that aren't on the tour, and some of the back parts of the cave, and the highest parts, and old entrances, and all kinds of things. So that was pretty fun. And I got to see cave fish in the river. Yeah, we searched until we finally found one. That was kind of fun.
Melissa and I got a private tour of that cave once too, but just because we went on a weekday in the off season.
I earlier this month went to Arizona to the Tucson area to help teach in OCR in orientation to cave rescue, and so the mock was in Pepper Sauce Cave, which I've heard a lot about. Like, I've read about it. I take in like the NSF news and everything because there's been so many graffiti cleanups there because it's really close to a road, and so I guess people from Tucson come up a lot. So anyways, it was a really fun cave to go caving in, but because it is like it's a public cave on the Forest Service, they didn't close it just for our mock. So even while we were having our mock with four patients and like doing searches, and I was a ghost. I was following a search team in this one section of the cave that was really small and tight. That's why I was chosen to go with this particular search team, because the other instructors couldn't all fit. And what do you know? We're like caving, and there's people with a dog just going by, just holding this dog. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, this is a different type of caving than I'm used to in New Mexico. And I mean, there's trash everywhere. And so like the searchers like would ask me, they're like, is this candy wrapper a clue to like the person? And I'm like, I really don't think so. I think we should ignore all the trash. Like, I don't think any of this is a clue to where the person is hiding, and or the patient, you know, where they were. And and they almost didn't find the patient because they went to this other room, and then they came back out and they're like, oh, we don't want to go in there. People were just vaping in there. Like, it like, smells so bad. And I was like, well, maybe we should just check. And yeah, sure enough, the guy was on the other side of that room that was full of, and they're like, oh, glad we checked. Like, we almost didn't come looking for you because of those other random people vaping in there. So it was like chaos. Like, it was crazy to see it all. But I mean, a shout out to the Southern just weird, like people just carrying dogs through the cave and vaping and just the trash and
And the service animals.
yeah. But the mock still went well despite all those distractions. So it was a fun day of caving.
Ellen and I went back into Sector Parallel for restoration with Mike Manser again. We're kind of, I think now up to 15 different cave restoration fixes in there.
Paz is very good at
Yeah,
finding the pieces that
yeah.
mix together.
Ellen dug, I don't know how many, probably, I shouldn't
dug a
say
lot
dug,
of
but
them.
she reached in with a pole and pulled out, I don't know, 50 pieces of speleothems, and we started matching them up, doing a lot of work here recently with Mike. That project is super important, and one thing I would like to mention is that if anyone is leading trips into that area, please don't go in there. Put kind of a temporary closure unofficially on that trail back into that area because there's just so much being, fixed right now. We had some people that had been in there recently and wanted to go see it. They may not need to go in there right now just because we got a lot of jacks and stuff up in place. So
One little bump.
yeah, it's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and if you're a leader, there's a lot of beautiful places in the Second Parallel to see. So maybe not that.
Mm-hmm. All right, that covers it for trip reports. Any upcoming trips or requests for upcoming trips? I'm sure we'll have some though, and we'll announce them.
Yeah, I will say there was a guy who called me today at the park asking about trips. I guess he's coming up soon, like with his family, but he's the only person in his family who does like vertical stuff, and so he was asking me like, it's like, oh, can I just get on someone else's recreational trip? And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm like, I'm not gonna matchmake. I'm not a matchmaker for cavers. But so I told him, but you should contact the local grotto, Pecos Valley Grotto, and see if anyone's willing to take you. Like that's the way, like out of town cavers can get into these caves if they don't already have a group to get their own permit. So I will say maybe coming up soon there'll be another person asking grotto members on. So I pointed into the Facebook page, saying, hey, anyone want to take me caving?
Sounds good.
I just got down tonight, the spiders closed the roads.
Oh, it is.
With a caveat that we will be placing radon detectors, so if anyone would want to go on trips,
Just to
we'll
put
be able
radon-
to place the radon detectors, but that will be happening.
Why exactly?
Which is radon.
Oh, because it's.
But we'll be trying to collect data to show that it's not.
So we determined what's going to happen already.
No, we determined we're going to measure, because there's some thought that there might be some seasonality, but we don't have any data, or we don't have enough data to make well-informed management decisions. We want to collect more data so we can come up with a reasonable way of managing.
I'm removing the changes.
We lost some great cavers in the last 2 months since the last meeting as well, so I just wanted to mention Michael Queen, Lee White. And before closing, I just thought it'd be nice if we had a brief moment of silence for them. Next month, Mr. Michael Manser will be coming, so see you next month.